Welcome back. Super delighted to have my friend and County Commissioner from District 1, Rick LoCastro, with us today. Hello, Rick.
Hi, Mary. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. And District 1, what does that mean here in Collier County?
You know, I get that a lot. We have 5 districts. District 1 is the largest footprint and the largest population as well, although all the districts are very close in size. But District 1 is about half of Naples, Marco Island, Goodland, Isles of Capri. And if you drive down US 41 all the way to Everglades City, it's everything along that stretch. So Henderson Creek, Port of the Islands, it's a very large footprint.
I love that. And, you know, one of the things I love about you, Rick, is you really are out in the entire district, really talking to people, having, doing great things for all of them and representing every one of us here in District 1, of which I am as well, where I personally live, and where one of our Marco Island offices. But today we're here to talk about a lot of cool things. And one of which is we had this thing called Ian a few months ago. And although we weren't horribly destroyed, there was a lot of stuff that was going on. So talk about what's happened since then.
Yeah, there really was. I mean, a lot of folks were either significantly affected by Ian or totally not. But we had a lot more destruction than you think. And obviously, as you move further north, everybody knows what happened in Fort Myers and Sanibel, Captiva. But here we had a lot. I'll use Isles of Capri as an example. We had houses just on the other side of the Marco Bridge here, the other side of the Jolly Bridge, that had 4 and 5 feet of water in them. And so the destruction, Goodland, the destruction was severe. And although we've made a lot of strides since then, I mean, you could drive around and you don't even think maybe we got hit by a hurricane too long ago. There's still quite a few people that haven't even done one repair on their house yet. They're still fighting with insurance or FEMA or trying to get their finances together. So between some houses that sustained quite a bit of record-setting storm surge, and then our parks, our marinas, and I know we'll get into that, there was a lot of county properties that sustained serious damage. And much like a homeowner, we're fighting to get contractors and equipment and materials and repair out there. And I'm really proud of the county that in record time got our beaches and almost all of our parks and marinas fully functional in record time after Ian.
Which is really quite honestly phenomenal, because that was a historic storm that no one has ever seen. That it's a great reason why we live in Southwest Florida and why we're living here, because we have great commissioners like yourself that are really fighting to get those things done. You brought up the parks. So certain parks where people are launching kayaks, have businesses, that sort of thing.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that, because I know there's a lot of buzz out there that people don't know about.
Yeah. My biggest challenge right now in District 1, and it has been for a while, even before Ian, is Keck, Sambus Park and Marina right here on Marco Island. It's a very busy and popular park because of what's on the right on the other side of the seawall, which is beautiful marine life and dolphins, and there's people that run businesses out of Keck, Sambus, and the use of it has really exploded over the years. We haven't done a great job in the county over the years at controlling the population through there, the traffic, the parking. And I don't mean necessarily limiting it, but you have to have oversight of the operation. It can't be what I call the Wild West show. And it has been for many, many years. And we've done a lot in the last year. I mean, I've personally put a lot of airspeed, to use my Air Force term, behind Keck, Sambus. We now have park rangers out there in full force, helping with the parking and the launching of boats and whatnot. But then when Ian hit, a lot of people don't know that Keck, Sambus was the one park / marina that took the most damage of any park or marina, especially in District 1, but in really all of Collier County. And of course, the gate is locked there. And if you are someone that uses Keck, Sambus exclusively for recreation or for your business, you won't be able to peer over the locked gate and see the extent of the damage. But the seawall, the marine store was totally flooded. We have all kinds of damage in the parking lot. The docks were virtually destroyed in most areas. And we can't just reopen a park if it's not going to be safe. And as I said before, we have the same challenges trying to get contractors and safety inspections and all the things that a normal homeowner does. How many people had their docks destroyed in their home and the dock hasn't even been touched yet? And so we put our focus on major areas of Collier County to get them reopened, repaired, relaunched. Keck, Sambus is a little bit of a different animal. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks we're going to have a partial reopening, probably for citizens only, not the businesses yet. But also people need to know, I've gotten a lot of notes over the last few months and even prior to Ian, saying, why doesn't the county create more parking at Keck Sambus? Why have they limited spots? Why doesn't the county do this? Why doesn't the county do that? And I've had to educate and remind citizens, some who have lived here a long time, it's the city of Marco that's responsible for zoning and the number of parking spaces. And I don't say that to throw them under the bus, but I can't make Marco Island and their city council do anything. We work together. No, and I don't say that in a bad way, but we work together. But if the park is only zoned for so many parking spots, then we have to abide by that. And obviously we talk with them, and we've taken some latitude prior to Hurricane Ian and created a few more parking spots because they're so valuable out there. And then, the city came back to us and said, you can't just rip up grass, throw in some gravel and park trailers there because it's not zoned for it. And the overarching, the most important thing that is a big misconception is Keck Sambus is not zoned for commercial business use by the city of Marco. It never has been. But over time, as businesses operated out of there, and nobody said anything, maybe it wasn't a problem. Well, now that we leap forward to 2022, 2023, and businesses operate out of there in large numbers, the city of Marco has contacted the county saying, we want to discuss starting to follow the law, which would be no businesses allowed there. The pushback that I actually led is, can't we find some balance? You can't be flying at Mach 10 and all of a sudden stop the airplane, another Air Force reference, on a dime. So, okay, if you want to start enforcing the law, maybe you should have talked about that a few years ago, but if we're going to talk about it now, maybe we can sort of wean certain businesses off. Maybe we can have some sort of unique type of plan. And then, of course, Ian hit, and then that superseded everything. Now, it really doesn't matter what the plan is. The park's closed. But I'm expecting a partial reopening probably in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what that looks like. But we have a lot of repair work to still do out there.
Now, for those folks that, are running businesses or kayak launch or small watercraft, there's other places to go, right?
Absolutely.
What does that look like?
So the businesses that have really been affected by Keck Sambus are the ones that Keck Sambus was their sole location to do what they do. And in many cases, it was the jet ski companies. They launch from Keck Sambus, and everything that their clients see is right off of the boat ramp, right off of the shoreline there. So you can't tell them, well, launch out of Goodland or Isles of Capri, because they can't motor all the way back over to Keck Sambus area. But we've had plenty of businesses that have pivoted, and Goodland now is sort of busting from the seams because they got a lot of that overflow. There's also a boat ramp on 951 across from the Isles of Capri sort of entrance. That has gotten a lot more use by people using that. So a business that can't pivot to another location and their sole source is a county-run, county-owned, city of Marco overseen location, they really have a major limit on their business in time of trouble. If a hurricane hits and levels that marina, their business is going to come to a full stop. And we have, a handful of businesses, maybe even a little more than a handful, that are dead in the water because the one and only marina they've been operating out of is now not functional.
Yeah. Well, let's skip over from those kind of struggles, which quite honestly, you're doing a great job, to now some, improvement. So I've had a lot of questions from folks about Isle of Capri and that new multi-use kind of building. Can you tell everybody what that is and where you are in the process?
Well, there's a large parcel of land on Isles of Capri, waterfront property that has sat vacant for quite a long time. Many years ago, before I was even here, there was a small little sort of tiki hut restaurant, Nick's, that people used to go to. And then it was one of the major hurricanes, took it out. And so it has sat dormant for a long period of time. And it's a large parcel of waterfront property that's zoned commercial. The citizens of Isles of Capri and people that visit Isles of Capri got used to that empty lot staying empty. Well, the reality is the lot wasn't and hasn't been empty all this time because it's unbuildable. It's empty because the one and only owner never built it on it. And also chose not to put it on the market for sale. And so you get used to that lot staying empty. But sometimes when people say, oh, that vacant lot, I always say, it's not a vacant lot. It's a parcel of land owned by somebody
Right.
that is vacant, and
Right.
that's different. It's not just an abandoned piece of forest land. So then the owner then decided that and had talked about many different ideas over the years, but of course that's not a contract. So when people say, oh, 15 years ago he promised to do this, I mean, you're in the real estate business.
Yeah.
A lot has changed since then.
Very much
so
so.
maybe something you would have done 15 years ago makes no sense now.
Sure.
Maybe a piece of property that was worth a certain amount 15 years ago is worth a totally different amount now. Yeah. But I've been working very closely with the Isles of Capri citizens, but also too the developer. I mean, I represent all folks. And to make a long story short, the developer applied to have that lot rezoned from commercial, C3 commercial, to residential. C3, that lot zoned for C3 commercial would fit basically a 10-city type of operation on it, about 80,000 square feet of commercial. And that could be restaurants, bars, music venues, shopping. And so it's easy to say, hey, we'd rather have that than a tall condo. But I can tell you, if you live close to something that is an 80,000 square foot, commercial type of operation, you're going to have some issues. And so Isles of Capri is a very small community, and going back and forth, in the end, the county commissioners voted unanimously to rezone the property residential, but we negotiated very aggressive downsizing of the project. So it was going to be 14 stories. We negotiated down to 9. It's 122 feet instead of what could have been 160, 70, 180 feet. It's a smaller footprint. Is it still a large construction project? Well, whether it was commercial or residential, it was going to be something large.
Yeah.
So some people that were screaming saying, keep it commercial. I would say, okay, well, commercial can look a lot of different things. Yeah. And, I was getting emails from people, what that lot needs is just a small little general store and maybe a little restaurant. Nobody pays $30 or $40 million for a piece of waterfront property and then, builds a small general store. Mm-hmm. If somebody bought an empty lot from you for $5 million, would they build a 2-bedroom, no bath house on it?
Yeah, no.
Of course not.
No.
So, the reality is it was time for that developer to decide, or he decided that he wanted to do something with that property,
right.
And he has every right to. One of the things that I would remind citizens is if a big development has come into your neighborhood, and this isn't specific to Isles of Capri, now I'm just sort of giving advice.
Yeah.
When it comes to your neighborhood, one of the first things that happens that's directed by county direction is the developer has to have what's called NIMs, neighborhood information meetings. They have to have basically town hall meetings and say, hi, I'm a developer. I'm either trying to get this lot rezoned or the lot is zoned for something specific, and here's what I want to build.
Yeah.
And then it's a conversation. Sometimes it can be something really aggressive. Sometimes it can be very constructive. But I really encourage citizens to not blow those conversations off, not to cancel them, not to be no-shows. This is your chance to either negotiate or even just listen. You don't have to promise anything. You can give your opinion, but in some cases, we've had several projects around Collier County where the citizens sort of shut down the developer and they missed an opportunity to converse or to just listen. Like I said, they don't have to agree to anything, but at least they know maybe more about what the developer might be thinking, other possible options.
Right.
And then that helps us as commissioners, because I'll give you a perfect example. There's a piece of property over by Lely on Collier Boulevard. It's right across from Skillets. It's a small little footprint, but that was zoned commercial. The developer wanted it to have it rezoned residential. The citizens initially were up in arms. No, we don't want another apartment complex. But during the NIM, they realized, leave it commercial. It might be an Ocean Prime type of restaurant, but commercial is also a Valvoline auto oil change place. Commercial is also a storage unit. So, before you say no to maybe an apartment complex that citizens, and then in conjunction with commissioners, can maybe negotiate and downsize and make sure the architecture is a certain way. We can negotiate the landscape and the aesthetic look of the place. Instead of looking out of your window and seeing maybe a nice residential community that's beautifully landscaped, you might be looking at the back of a strip mall and all of their garbage cans. Those citizens quickly realize that, hey, we've got more say in negotiating with the construction company than just saying, put whatever you want to put on their commercial, and they're the ones that actually led the charge and agreed in Lely to not only support flipping it to residential, but they were a big help in coordinating and negotiating with the developer exactly what they wanted it to look like.
Sure. Oh, I love hearing that from that perspective, because it is when we work together. And as our commissioner here in District 1, that's the role that you raised your hand for. That's what you love to do. That's why you're out and about doing things like this.
I love to do it. It depends what day you ask me. It depends what day you ask me. You know, let me add one thing though to educate some folks a little bit also on zoning. When something is zoned C3 commercial, it gives the developer really the most latitude to build what they want on it. Sure. And as long as it meets code and it's not too high and it's not too dense, you know, C3 commercial is what has allowed what I think is an overabundance of storage units down US 41.
I knew you were going to say that because you're not a fan of where they sit.
Well, what I say is I'm a fan of cohesion.
Yeah, okay? Right.
And if you want a cohesive community, 4 storage units in a row, 4 gas stations in a row, 4 auto parts stores in a row aren't cohesion. But if a developer or a landowner owns a lot and it's developed C3 is the one thing that gives citizens less say, and it gives the developer more latitude. And as long as they sort of color within the lines. That proposed development doesn't even come to commissioners for approval. A lot of people think everything that they see being constructed, it came to commissioners. We all said yes or no. If you own a piece of property and it's zone C3 and you want to build a strip mall, a restaurant, and it's not going to be 30 stories and it's not going to be something that's over and above normal zoning guidance parameters, you apply for permits, they get approved, and then you build it. Nothing ever comes to me or the planning commission or because you're building something that you're allowed to build on that piece of property. I'm working right now with our county attorney, and it might be a little too late, because once you build all these things like they're built now, it's like the pyramids. They're there for 1,000 years. But I really think if we would have been a little bit smarter, maybe 10 years ago, to look at some of these more generic zoning categories and put a little bit more structure, a little bit more detail, so that we really had a little more control over went there. That's how you get a cohesive community, rather than just things popping up randomly wherever a developer wants them to go.
You know, we talked just so many great things in this session. I think the biggest thing that, is my takeaway is you are my voice when it comes to the county. And yet you always talk to us through a lot of different ways. So whether it's a town hall, whether it's a Really Mary, whatever, but you have a way to get, information to me, and that is your newsletter. Yeah. So how does someone sign up for your newsletter?
Well, first, I really want to thank citizens. I've got 40,000 subscribers in my database to my newsletter, and I write every word of it, even the typos. So when some people say, hey, Commissioner, thank your team for writing the newsletter, my assistant and I really work hard on it, and she works putting it together and getting the photos and making it, look the way it looks. But I write every single word of text on there. And I'm also really proud that it's one of the few newsletters of an elected official that if you get my newsletter and hit reply on that email, it comes right back to me. I'm the only one that checks my inbox. I'm the only one that replies to citizen emails. If you get an email back from me, I typed every single word of it. And that takes time. But I think, this is a job that has great responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to get my newsletter, you can get it one of several ways. You can go to ricklocastro.com, my website, and right at the top it says sign up for the newsletter, and all you do is type your email address. You're not going to get spammed. Your email doesn't get sold to somebody. I don't use it for other reasons. Or if you have my email address, my county email address, which is also on my website, just send me an email and say, please add this email address to your database. And I send out my newsletter about every 7 to 10 days, and I talk about these very things, and it's me talking. Right. And probably the biggest compliment, or maybe it was less than a compliment, but somebody who met me for the first time, and much like you, we talk fast, we talk loud, we speak with with a lot of emotion. He met me and he says, I can tell you write every word of your newsletter because when I read it, I can it sounds exactly like you.
Yeah,
you know?
check out your voice.
But I want it to be that personal approach, and I don't run from anything. If you got my last newsletter, 75% of it was about Isles of Capri because it was such a big, important decision, vote, controversial. I mean, I could think of all the different, adjectives for it, but I wanted citizens to know that we didn't just sit on our hands or put our finger in the wind. We weren't getting something under the table, and a lot of people sometimes that disagree maybe with a certain vote and send me emails telling me that sometimes they haven't been following the case for the full year. What I can tell you is I've put the time in. I've met with both sides, and even though you might hear from 1,000 citizens that feel a certain way, citizens also have to remember, to use your term, yes, I am the citizen voice, but I'm also here to make sure that we abide by county ordinances, county law, that we follow procedure. Doesn't mean there isn't some wiggle room. I heard from one citizen that said, well, if you follow, county law and county procedure, you'd never rezone anything. And sometimes people are upset when something gets rezoned. Sure. Rezoning is part of what is allowed. Our job is to decide if it makes sense. Right. And sometimes there's no, you can make an argument for either case, but we have to find the best option, and it's never going to make everybody happy. No. And at times I say we can do anything, but we can't do everything. Yeah. And so, you have to be able to look at all sides and sometimes take some of the personalization and passion out of it. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like to look at really tall buildings, but some of those people that send me angry emails, they live in a very tall building right now. So I'm sure they're thankful that one was built. I realize you don't like a tall building because you might lose your sunset view, but somebody does own that piece of property and they are allowed to build on it. And so, we did I'm really proud of the other commissioners for the aggressive job we did on Isles of Capri. We still have a long way to go. I met with citizens just the other day. We've got to hold that developer to what they promised and make sure that we get the quality of what they're going to build. And then we were able to negotiate a lot of additional extras. This developer is going to add 2 new culverts to Isles of Capri, which have been needed for many, many years, nice. Mary. And you're talking, these are, this is $2 million value. I don't know that I could have gotten that out of the county in the next couple of years. That's something that has to be in the 5-year plan. Right. And it's so now all of a sudden he has to build those culverts. He's also going to put in a sewer line, which will be needed down the road when Isles of Capri converts from septic to sewer. Sure. And if he didn't put that line in, that cost goes to the taxpayer. So, there's some things sometimes embedded in a decision that the average citizen might not know about. And, I welcome hearing from all sides. And, I try to make the best decision that I can with all of the information I have. And, I feel good about all the decisions that we've made up to this point. There's always going to be people on another side that necessarily don't like it. But, I'm proud of what the citizens of Isles of Capri did as far as letting us hear their voice. Right. And now the leadership that I'm working with on Isles of Capri, they only want to look forward, so they're like, hey, we made our voice known. Our loud voices is what allowed the commissioners to really negotiate down what the initial project could have been. Right. And so it takes a team, it takes a group, and it won't please everyone, but I think folks that take a professional look at something and are involved as much as I've been in many of these projects understand sort of the ins and outs.
I love that. So Rick, thank you again today. We want to make sure, again, if you want to have a voice heard, you know that he will respond to you when you go out to his email, sign up for his newsletter, and click, I want to send in a question or such. Make sure you do that, because at the end of the day, all we have is a voice, and he's our voice for District 1. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mary.
I look forward to seeing you next time. If you love content like this, make sure you hit the link below for the full view on YouTube. And as always, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Really?